Hey everyone, welcome to my YouTube channel. Today I'm going to do a demonstration of my project called Auto Redeploy Jamf Framework. I'm also going to do a quick tutorial that shows you how to set up the project and get started with it. I'm going to demonstrate both the basic and the more advanced setup for the project. I will show you the Jamf configuration, the repository setup, what it's like to run the workflow, as well as what the more advanced workflow looks like and how that operates. The problem that we're trying to solve is scenarios in which a macOS device is no longer checking into Jamf and no longer running policies. However, MDM commands still work. Maybe you'll see that a machine has stopped checking in for several days, but it's actually still receiving MDM commands or accepting changes to configuration profiles. You may also see device signature errors, or a person is in self-service trying to run a policy and they're also receiving either a signature error or some other connection error. In these specific scenarios, we can actually redeploy the Jamf framework to fix the issue with the computer checking into Jamf. This project automatically identifies devices with broken Jamf framework and redeploys it silently using MDM. The idea behind this is that you can use this as a tool to make sure that your macOS fleet is maintaining consistent communication with your Jamf Pro server. Let's start with the Jamf configuration first. And the first thing we're going to want to do here is create a new smart computer group. I will name this smart group A. And for the criteria, you're going to set a last check-in date. And in this example, I'm going to use a value of 14. However, you can use whatever value you think is appropriate. I would just suggest don't do anything less than 3 days. And the next thing we're going to want to do is create a configuration profile. And this profile is going to have a null payload. So it's not going to actually do anything when it's applied to a machine. And so we will just call this null configuration profile for now. And for the payload, we're going to go to application and custom settings, and then to upload, and we'll click add here. And then here you can put whatever you want. And for the plist, we'll use the provided plist in the GitHub repository, which just sets a key of null to true. And this does nothing. We're just using it more or less as a marker to see what machines still have functional APNS and can receive profiles. We are going to set the scope of this profile to the smart group that we created earlier. The next thing we're going to do here is we're going to create a second smart computer group. I will name this smart group B. And for the criteria, we're going to use a last check-in of the same value that we set for smart group A. We are going to add a second criteria for profile name, and profile name has, and we will set it to the name of our null configuration profile that we created just a second ago. So this smart group B will be the target of our framework redeployment. Any machine that has not checked in for 14 days will get this profile scoped to them. And if this profile installs, they will end up in smart group B, which indicates that despite not having a check-in for 14 days, they're still able to receive configuration profiles, which means they're a great candidate for a Jamf framework redeployment. The next thing we're going to want to do in Jamf is create the API role and client. So if you go to settings and search for API and then go to API roles and client, you can create a new API role, which I have done here. And the privileges that you want to add to this role are read computer check-in, read smart computer groups, and send computer remote command to install package. So once you create and save this, you can go back to API roles and clients and API clients, click new up in the right corner, create a new client. You can name it whatever you'd like. Just make sure that you give it that API role that we just created. At this point, you want to save the client ID and the client secret. When you click save on the API client, you'll also have the option to enable the client, at which point a client secret will be generated, and that value will not show again. So once it displays, you want to copy it and save it for a future step. And that page is going to look something like this. So you want to make sure that you either copy client credentials to clipboard and save that, or copy the ID and secret individually and save those as well. Okay, so the next thing we're going to want to do is configure the GitHub repository. If you go to the main repo template here and click use this template and then create a new repository, you can name this whatever you'd like. I'll just name this Jamf framework test, and I'll set this to private and then click create repository. And then once that's done, you should go to settings and then under security for secrets and variables, then click actions. And here we're going to add 4 new secrets to the repository. So click new repository secret here. And the 4 secrets that you're going to add are listed in the GitHub instructions in the README, but it's group ID, and this will be the value of smart group B, which we created earlier, which again is the target for our framework redeployment. And for the ID, you can find it in the URL when you're on this page looking at the smart group. So in our case, it is 36. So I will save that value and click add secret. So this one will be Jamf base URL. And the format of this is going to be just as no HTTPS. You just want to put in your Jamf instance name. So whatever the instance is, .jamfcloud.com. And next we're going to add the Jamf client ID and Jamf secret. So we'll do Jamf client ID. And here we will paste that value that we copied earlier when we created the API client. We'll click add secret there. And finally, we are going to do the Jamf client secret. And again, you want to grab the client secret that was created earlier and paste that value in here and then click add secret. So now you're set up to do the very basic workflow. To test this workflow, we can go to the actions tab here in GitHub and then go to the schedule Jamf framework redeploy workflow and click run workflow here and then click run workflow again. And this will kick off the schedule Jamf framework redeploy workflow. In a second, we'll see this pop up. There it is. And we can actually watch this run in real time. As you can see, each step is listed out here. It goes through and sets up Python, installs the SDK. It runs the main script, which includes the actual framework redeploy command. It makes a GET request for the computers in our smart group. However, we don't have any computers in that smart group. So it says no computers found. It checks for a Slack webhook to see if you have notifications set up. If you do, that would go through. However, in this case, we don't have it set up yet. And then it goes through and completes the rest of the job. This ran successfully. However, we didn't have any machines in that smart computer group, so it didn't have any machines to run the framework redeploy on. I've updated the group ID secret value in GitHub to a different smart group that has machines in it, just so that we can see how that works. Under the actions, we'll go back to the scheduled Jamf framework redeploy workflow. We'll click run workflow and run workflow again. And we can watch this run live. We're going through, installing the SDK. And now we're going to run the main script. And it's going to go through the rest of the workflow here. As you can see, it made the classic API request to that computer group, and we get a response that says that we are redeploying the framework for computer IDs 13 and 14, which are my 2 test machines. It then sends a Pro API request to the Jamf Management Framework redeploy endpoint for each of the machines, and it returns the response of that redeploy. And if we go to that test machine under the History tab and Management History, we can see under the pending commands that the install application command was sent about a minute ago, the device was busy, so it says it will try again. The reason for this is because I was signed out of the device. So I just signed in, and we'll go ahead and refresh this. We'll go back to management history, and we can see that install application ran less than 1 minute ago. And if we go back to inventory, we can see that the machine checked in 1 minute ago, and the last enrollment was less than 1 minute ago. At this point, it's important for me to tell you that the framework redeployment does trigger an enrollment event. So any policies that you have configured to run on enrollment would enroll at this point in time. The machine basically gets treated as if it was just enrolled for the first time. So that means also any enrollment settings you have configured in the global enrollment settings will also occur. So if you have clear policy logs on computers checked, once this framework redeploy occurs, the policy logs would be cleared. Other thing that you could do with this basic setup is go back to the code, go to the .github directory, and then go to workflows. And in here, you can edit the scheduled redeploy Jamf framework YAML file to have the workflow run automatically on a schedule. You would uncomment this, uncomment that, and configure when you want the workflow to run. That is the most basic setup. This would allow you to run a Jamf framework redeploy on that specific computer group on a schedule or do a manual run. However, this assumes that there's computers in that group. It would run every time regardless of whether there were any computers in that group. It's not super efficient, and it's a lot of times it's either not running when it should because it's only set to run once a week, or on the other hand, it's running when it really doesn't need to. The better way to do this is to have a more event-driven workflow. And to do that, we need to set up a webhook in Jamf and also set up a webhook adapter that will allow us to parse the data from the webhook and send it to the GitHub workflow. And this would allow us to run the workflow only on a Jamf webhook event of smart group membership change. What this means is that anytime a computer joins that smart group, the workflow would kick off automatically. This is much more efficient than having the workflow either run manually or run on a schedule. And it also means that it only runs when necessary. So this is the preferred workflow. However, there is some more setup involved. So it's up to you whether you think the additional setup is worth it. But I will go ahead and show you how that works right now. Okay, at this point, we might as well talk about the Slack notifications. If you go to the URL in the README for Slack, it's api.slack.com/apps. You can create a new app, click from scratch, pick a workspace, click Create App, then go down to Incoming Webhooks on the left side here. Switch this to on for activate incoming webhooks. Scroll down and click Add New Webhook. Select the channel. In my case, I'm just going to choose Slackbot and click Allow. And then you'll scroll down and copy this webhook URL. This webhook URL we will add as a new repository secret in our repository. We will name it Slack_webhook, and we'll paste that URL and click Add Secret. Cool. Now if we try to run a workflow again, we should get that Slack notification. So as you can see, the framework was redeployed again for 13 and 14. We get the Slack notification and message that says successfully sent the message. Over in Slack, you can see from the Slack bot, we are receiving a notification from the app we created named Test Notification. The event was a workflow dispatch, and it was successful. We get the same output here that we got in the GitHub workflow. Let's go over the more advanced setup that includes the webhook. The first thing we're going to do is we're going to create a random secret to use with our fast API service. And to do that, we're going to use the command open SSL rand-hex 32. And this will create a 256-bit hex string that we can use as our secret. So go ahead and save this. Put that off to the side here. And what we're going to want to do after that is go back into GitHub, and we'll actually just follow the link I have here, which is github.com/settings. You can see it up at the top, /personal-access-tokens. We will generate a new token. We will authenticate with a passkey, and then make sure that you are selecting only the repository that you want. Select that, scroll down, and then we want to make sure that we give it permission for actions and set that to read and write. And then hit generate token here. Click generate token again. And then go ahead and copy this token value and again, save it off to the side. Cool. Now that that part's done, we are going to host our fast API service on fly.io. I'm using fly.io just because it's super simple to set up, and for demonstration purposes, it works great. You can really host anywhere. You could host it in Azure, AWS, your own on-prem server, wherever you can host something. So in this demo, I've already created a fly.io account, and we're just going to go through the initial setup. And to do that, we are going to open terminal, and we'll start by doing a brew install of flyctl, which is the command line tool. And then at this point, we actually want to go back to our repository, and we are going to grab this here because we're actually going to clone the repo locally on the machine, and then we will cd into the fast API directory within the project. And from there, we will use a command to launch the application to fly.io. Okay, so I've opened up Visual Studio Code, and I'm going to do a git clone of our repository. And from here, we're going to do a cd into the fast API webhook directory. And once we're here, we are actually going to do a fly auth login. And this will prompt us to sign in to fly.io. Once you're authenticated, run a fly launch command. You won't get this notification that says the app already exists. You can just type Y here. And then if you want to tweak any of these settings, you can type Y, otherwise type N, and this will generate a fly.toml file, where you can also edit the configuration if you'd like. And it's going to go ahead and start building the app and launching it on fly.io. And once it's complete, you'll get your app URL down here. This is what you will add to your Jamf webhook, and the fly.toml file here gets generated as well. Cool. So at this point, we are going to set our secrets in fly.io, and we will start by doing fly secret set github_pat, and then we will paste in the personal access token value that we copied earlier. So we'll paste that in and click enter. And the next secret we're going to enter is our repo value. And for that, you want to include your username / the repo name. And the last thing we'll set is the webhook secret. So fly secret set webhook secret equal to, and we will paste in that value that we created earlier. Cool. So once that's done, we will do a fly deploy to deploy our application. And if we want to test this, we can do a curl command. We are passing our webhook secret, and we are simulating an event of group added device IDs of 13. And this is just to test whether the fast API service can receive a fake webhook event and forward that to GitHub. Cool. And then if we hit enter there, we'll see that we get a status of dispatched, and it returns the computer ID and a status code. We can then go into GitHub, the GitHub repo, and go to actions and see that the webhook triggered Jamf framework redeploy workflow has been kicked off. And it looks like it was successful. We'll go in here and we will check out the run webhook redeploy. And as you can see, it redeployed the framework for computer ID 13, which is the device ID that we passed in that curl request. We can also check the logs by doing a fly logs command. And as you can see, the workflow was triggered and we see the same information here. And now that we know that's working, we can do the final part of the configuration, which is returning to Jamf to set up the webhook. So if you go to settings and search for webhooks, click new in the top right hand corner to create a new webhook. And I will just name this test webhook. Make sure that it's enabled, and we will paste that fly URL in here. For authentication type, we want to do header authentication. And in there, we want to paste our webhook secret, which again is that value we generated earlier in terminal. And you can set the connection timeout and read timeout. We want to set the content type to JSON. And the webhook event will be Smart Computer Group Membership Change. And then we will select our test group, Smart Group B, and click Save. What this is doing here is it's looking for a Smart Group membership change for the group that we're using to detect whether a machine has broken framework. So when a machine joins that group, this webhook event will fire, and the group added device IDs will be sent to the Fast API service, which would look basically like this, where the group added device IDs key is passed with whatever value, whatever the device ID is that has been added. And that will subsequently run the webhook triggered Jamf redeploy workflow. So for the purpose of this video, I'm actually going to change the smart group here to a group I just made called test group A smart, and we will hit save. And I'm going to simulate what it would be like to add a new device to this group. In the case of an actual framework redeploy, a machine would be picked up into the smart group and that would kick off the workflow. In this case, we're just going to fake it. So I'm going to add a machine to this smart group, and we'll just set computer name is equal to my test machine. Now that this machine has been added to the smart group, it should have kicked off a webhook event, which puts the workflow into action. If we go back to our actions here and reload, the webhook redeploy kicked off automatically. And if we go in and look at it, it looks like it's already completed in 16 seconds. And you can see that the run webhook redeploy script ran with the device that I just added to that group. And we should have gotten a Slack notification as well, which we did. And we can see that it was triggered by the webhook triggered Jamf framework redeploy. And here is that same output. If you found this useful, please like and subscribe. Also leave a comment down below on what other videos or project ideas you would like to see in the future.